Namaste and welcome to this exciting episode of Sattology, debunking mythology. Sattology means science of truth or study of truth. Mythology means a study of fake lie imagination or science of fake lie imagination. Today we're going to talk about the India's relationships, military relationships with the borders. So without delay, let us welcome my very good friend and a very popular strategic analyst, Abhijit Iyer Mitra. Welcome.
Hey.
Abhijit, one thing it always comes to my mind with India is putting so many weapon systems now for the first time, and people are happy, generally happy. What is the actual posture with the China? Because it seems that many reports are coming out that China is in Arunachal Pradesh, China is in Ladakh, and China has encroached a lot of lands of India. Many reports are coming out. Many politicians are talking about it. So what is your view on what is happening at the borders with China?
Look, I only base my things on what I can see on satellites, not on gossip and hearsay. Because, normally you have to rely on press reports. Usually the thing is, if you can cross-verify press reports, you get a very different picture. So in Ladakh, they're definitely not, they haven't come any further than they did in 2013. Though there is a big build-up on the Chinese side of the border. In Arunachal Pradesh, from everything I am seeing from satellite imagery, they are very much on our side of the border, between 3 to 6 kilometers inside, depending on where you measure the border from.
So do you think that India is doing enough to take back that area, or they're still negotiating? If there is an aggression, why there is negotiation right now?
Well, I mean, you have to negotiate with your enemies, right? You don't negotiate with your friends. So there is a negotiation happening, but I think the issue here is not why is the negotiation happening. The issue is, why are we always caught on the back foot on these things? Why is it that we're never ahead of the curve? Why is it that when the Chinese keep doing this to us, why are we not doing the same thing back to them? And that is something you have to look within and see who controls policy making and how compromised they are.
So we keep on hearing one weapon system, and Indian Army comes up with another weapon system and they apply all those things. But we never see, you raised a very good point that why not we are not seeing it before and taking a proactive action. But we all see that they are matching arms to arms, but it's a very defensive posture. It doesn't help anyone.
So the way the Indian military views military purchases is basically, it's a substitute for failure. Why did you fail? Because we didn't have that weapon system. They never want to accept the fact that they were incompetent, that they didn't get something done, that they were sleeping on the job. And it just keeps continuing like this. And, they keep, it's a little, I don't know how many of you have kids, but if you have kids, it's like, son, why did you get, zero in mathematics in your school exam? Daddy, it's because, you didn't buy me your, the latest PlayStation 6 or 7 or whatever it is right now. If you buy me the PlayStation 6 or 7, I could have, or you didn't buy me the latest, I don't know, the National Geographic subscription, so I couldn't see all the latest documentaries and ace my exams. It's crap like this. This is what they do.
So we are also seeing Nagaland, and in the Nagaland, we see that the insurgents have recently, become more active. And we all know that Nagaland was a play of CIA and many other organizations of abroad as well for conversion activities. So the recent incident where some innocent people were killed and the court of inquiry has been ordered, do you think that was a attempt for subversion, where the para SF are supposed to be the cream of the Indian armed forces? They were lured into attacking something which they did not know.
They weren't lured into attacking anything they did not know. If you're a para commando, you need to be verifying everything like that. Okay, so first there was an intelligence failure, then there was a command failure, which is the commander should have told them to verify. There was a discipline and staff failure, because at some point the commandos also should have checked who the hell they are killing. They did none of that. So it's been when people say that they were lured into killing these people, how exactly are you lured into killing people? I don't understand this. I mean, you've got the guns, they're not firing back at you, so what the hell were you doing? Right? I mean, at some point you needed to have some kind of equipment to verify who the hell they were. Okay, some facial recognition camera or something to if you're killing 16 people. Everybody went ballistic at the Americans for killing 10 people claiming they were Taliban or ISIS or something like that, when in fact they were the family of an interpreter, including 6 children. Now tell me, why is it that the same people going hammer and tongs at America for not verifying and ascertaining who it was that got killed in the drone strike, and drones are impersonal weapons, are not raising the same questions when troops go and kill people who were obviously non-combatants, who couldn't even return fire? And how do you go shoot people who are unarmed? Tell me, how exactly do you get lured into this? So this is just complete rubbish. This is the rotten state of the Indian military right now, where we just people just get away with nonsense.
There are also demands for armed forces special provisions to be withdrawn in Nagaland, and because of which, so that they can pursue a legal action against these army soldiers. Now, so do you think that that is a decent demand given the situation of China and Myanmar acting in that region?
Sorry, I didn't get the question. What was
So
it again?
armed forces special provisions, there is an act which gives special powers.
AFSPA, yeah.
So do you think that there's a demand to repeal that act? Do you think that's a valid demand by the people?
Look, the demand is valid and it's unconnected to what happened today. If you had AFSPA or you did not have AFSPA, the Armed Forces Special Powers Act, you are still going to have situations like this. The situation that happened in Nagaland, where 16 innocent people lost their lives, had nothing to do with AFSPA. But AFSPA is a rotten law that you need to get rid of for a different set of reasons, because it completely removes any form of accountability of the military.
Given the state of affairs at the Indian borders, do you think that now these kind of incidents, they add to the security challenge of the armed forces in that region?
Look, the armed forces just get away with a lot. They are dealing with situations of their own creation where they don't actually want to end a militancy situation. Their officers don't have the guts to call out bad policies when they are enacted. They don't actually have a clear-cut counterinsurgency doctrine anywhere. So no, they basically they need to get their act together. They've been hiding behind AFSPA for way too long. They need to get their act together. You can actually have a very competent counterinsurgency strategy without AFSPA, because a lot of the powers that are given to you under AFSPA, like imposing a curfew somewhere here, there, etc., or requisitioning vehicles, is given to you under other acts, and it's kind of superfluous in this particular situation. So, Myanmar, China, there's nothing to do with AFSPA out here. So I mean, Himachal, if China was the problem, then Himachal should also be under AFSPA. Sikkim should also be under AFSPA. Arunachal should also be under AFSPA. They're not.
No, I think the reason might be that the amount of anti-India force and a lot of conversion has happened. Nagaland is almost like 80% Christian state. Now, a lot of conversion has happened, and so they see that there is a clear movement of separation from India, and that's why they imposed this act. According to me, that's what I feel.
Okay, so let's separate three separate things. The first is becoming Christian. Remember, Goa is also Christian, Kerala is Christian. You don't see terror movements out there. The second is the terrorism that has been happening out there, which has nothing to do with Christianity per se. It's just been around for a while out there. All those regions are disturbed regions. The third is the undeniable fact that the Methodist and Presbyterian Church out there have been aiding and abetting terrorism, including financial and armed support to the terrorists out there. Okay, now these are three separate things. The first two, okay, leave out the Christianity. We're only looking at the terror angle. Why did it get to that particular state? Because you've completely screwed up your governance out there. You haven't been able to deliver. You haven't been able to integrate it with the mainstream. You've done nothing out there. Then what is the point of screaming AFSPA later on when you haven't been able to deal with anything?
There's so much armed forces, and we see Arunachal Pradesh, and you already mentioned 6 to 7 kilometers inside Indian territory, and you also mentioned the reasons why it has happened. Why, despite now knowing all these things, there's a proactive action to take back all those lands? What is happening right now? Why is this? They're waiting for instruction from the top?
Look, there's nothing that's going to happen. You remember there was the Naga deal signed by the same government about 3-4 years ago, just before the last elections. Where is that today? Nowhere. We're still waiting to see what the hell happened out here, because there's no point in having a muddled approach right now. Even none of us know what the government is thinking about this. On one hand, you want to make peace. On the other hand, you're going around killing people like this. Some people are saying it was a revenge killing for the soldiers, the soldiers' family that got killed about 2-3 weeks back. Now, the issue is, when you make peace with a terrorist organization, there will always be fringe groups that come and try to break the peace. Why weren't you prepared for that? This is classic. There will always be extremists and hardliners on every side who will try to undermine something. This is how Yitzhak Rabin was killed by a Jew. This is how Mahatma Gandhi was killed by a Hindu. There will always be extremists opposing, trying to undermine it one way or another. And you fall right for that trap as well. First, you have to exercise due diligence, seeing to it that these splinter groups didn't do anything. You let your guard down. Then you carry out either what is a revenge attack or an attack of sheer incompetence. Look, India is a third world country. We're a joke. Our security apparatus is a joke. It's not a malignant country. It's just a typical incompetent third world country where everything is a shit show.
Now, recently there was a killing of a Sri Lankan Buddhist manager in a garment factory in Sialkot in Pakistan. And this again became a big cry in the international world for a Buddhist being killed on blasphemy charges, in the same way that they put a fake news out and he was trying to discipline his employees and he was killed. Now, we did not see a single reaction officially from India so far. Maybe I did not read it. Why did that happen? Such an important incident, and India did not say anything. Sri Lanka did not say anything. And so how these Buddhists and Hindus be protected in Pakistan when the governments are silent?
So basically, the Indian government doesn't want to protect anybody, and Sri Lanka has been, kuchi-cooing with Pakistan for a very long time, right? There's nothing new about it. Pakistani Sri Lankan friendship is a very old thing. They always try to play off India against Pakistan and then China against India, etc., 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 because they've always sought balancing from India being the big brother. Now, when it comes to protecting Hindus and Buddhists in Pakistan, let's be clear about one thing: India can't do squat. You can tweet about it. That's all you can do. I think they did put out a tweet of some kind, and I think the only tweet that the Sri Lankans put out was to say that thank you, Imran Khan, for going after the people who did this. Some 50, 60 people have in fact been arrested over that killing, and Imran Khan has promised that they're going to be dealt with very severely. Now, the issue is, why did this happen in the first place and who did this? That was the TLP, the Tariq-e-Labbaik Pakistan, which was a banned organization. It had just been unbanned last month or 2, 3 weeks. Just last month it had been unbanned. So you unban the organization and they go completely berserk and they do this as a statement of political power. Mind you, the organization still hasn't been banned. And nobody's calling for it to be banned.
No.
But let's be clear, India has no wherewithal to do anything about this.
Now, coming back to the Pakistan border, and our focus is only on the India's borders today. The India, recently they modified the L-70 guns to shoot down drones and other, these kind of intrusions into Pakistan, into India's territory, because they bring guns and drugs through the drones. Now, I always see that the reports coming out that the Indian security forces are using guns to shoot down these drones, which is impossible to shoot down. They're too small. You need some automated system to do that. So why these guns are not being deployed on Pakistan border where they're needed most, and also on Chinese border? I mean, do they have lack of these number of these guns?
No. I mean, guns to do what? Because see,
down.
drones interception is a completely different thing. We've got an excess of L-70 guns. We've been producing them for a long time. So you can use them wherever you want. But I mean, I've always wondered when they say, drones are being used to, L-70s are being used to shoot down drones. These are 40mm cannons, originally Swedish 40mm guns. I've always wondered if when they say we're using drones to shoot down, we're using L-70 to shoot down drones bringing arms and drugs. I think the guns that they use to shoot down the drones bringing drugs, they then consume the drugs and make statements like this. Because you've got to be seriously high to be making statements like we're using L-70s to shoot down drones. Those drones are small commercial drones like DJI, Parrot, and all these things. Reasonably heavy lift, so about 15, 20 kilos or something like that, which you use, which, there are simple things that you can do. You collaborate with DJI and Parrot and tell them, look, there are certain areas which are geofenced. You give them, say, a 15-kilometer wide patch of the line of actual, the LOC, and tell them, in this area, these drones should operate. And all the manufacturers will geofence it. In software updates, they'll geofence it silently. So even though it goes in for a software update, the Pakistanis won't even know that it can't fly past this. But we won't do that. We always go in for the maximalist solution, which is not a solution at all.
You're right, because most of these people are using DJI drones or cheap drones. They're not using any sophisticated military drones. They're using the cheapest one available from the market, and it can be easily fenced off in a certain way. We do that all the time in the US also, where we can fence around our border so that our drones don't cross our house boundaries. We do that all the time. But there are some restrictions over there. But in the border areas, there are no restrictions. It's an enemy state, and we can do whatever we want to do. Now, coming back to the India's posture against Ladakh and also against POK, do you think that they will ever take back POK militarily?
Impossible. They'll keep talking about this. Look, Indians are basically dumb idiots. You keep giving them some story, some fantastical story, they'll buy it. Right? You tell them, we're going to then go capture Tibet. We're like, yeah, mission Tibet, yay, let's go, rah, 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 that kind of thing. This is exactly like, George Bush's mission accomplished in Iraq, and look how that turned out. Today, Iraq, for all effects and purposes, an Iranian fiefdom. This is like that. foolish, overstated missions. We're going to take back Pakistan occupied Kashmir. I mean, are you serious? Do you know they have nuclear weapons? What do you think they're going to do when they're faced with irreconcilable defeat? Same with China. I don't think they think these things through. They just make these, they really fart. And they think they can get away with it.
No, we have seen a conflict under nuclear umbrella in Kargil. We have seen that Balakot, Uri strikes, and Pakistan did not. They threatened, but did not use nuclear weapons. In fact, India India threatened them with a nuclear strike first in these incidents. So, do you think that it is really possible for Pakistan? Maybe their nuclear nukes are not even tested right now.
No, the nukes are very good. See, they don't have to test the nukes. The Chinese test the nukes for them. Those are mostly Chinese nukes, right? And they're bloody good nukes. Now, the thing is, we need to remember there is a threshold for action under the nuclear umbrella. It's dangerous, but you can do it. Like, for example, Uri wasn't a big thing. Uri has been happening for a long time. Okay. Kargil similarly was, it was the first proof of concept. It didn't go very well for them, so they backtracked. Now, understand, occupying Kargil is very different from going in and occupying the whole of Pakistan occupied Kashmir. Remember, this is extremely difficult territory. You're going to lose thousands upon thousands of people getting the job done. Now, people coming in 5-6 kilometers is one thing. People going in 60, 70, 80 kilometers, capturing population centers and something else is a totally different ballgame. And remember, with Pakistan, the main thing is saving face. They may not use nuclear weapons, but they might. And then what do? There was nothing about Balakot or, I mean, Uri is small shit, I mean, this government wants to talk it up as something big. It really isn't. But Kargil, tell me, where was the scope of using nuclear weapons out there? Where was the catastrophic defeat out there? Where was the catastrophic loss of land out there? Nothing. It was horrible fighting in horrible territory, but that was about it. You start doing things which actually meaningfully impact Pakistani behavior. It's a very open-ended thing on when they'll use nukes and what they'll use nukes for.
Can't they do the same thing what they did in Kargil in Arunachal Pradesh also? Can't they do the same thing?
Well, that's China, but China doesn't use the same tactics that Pakistan does.
Yeah, they're legalizing their border villages actually,
which incidentally they controlled since 1959. But that's a different matter. The point is, why isn't the government opening its mouth and protesting these villages?
That's right. That's very good. Now, coming to the south of India, now recently there was a report coming out, and obviously most of the US media reports are crap. You and I have already said it, that they try to instigate people and just sit back and relax. Most of them are CIA operations. One of the report came out in the US. It was Belfair or some document last week came out that the Andaman is very less protected by the Indian forces. Maybe that was signaled to some other countries. I do not know what was the reason for that.
Look, it's perfectly well protected. You have a very significant naval presence out there. I don't know why these people keep making these stupid remarks, but it's just one of those things, every Western think tank has to do, hurl some muck at someone for something or the other. I don't take these things quite seriously. Everything that we've seen with the Andaman Command shows that it's very decently protected.
What will be the Biden administration reaction to Putin's 5-hour trip to India?
Well, America is going to be terribly happy about it. But, we've got to have our own foreign policy. The one thing we can't afford is for China to get into, for Russia to get into China's arms. It's inevitable, but we have to delay the process for as long as humanly possible. Right? And this is where Indian interest has to take priority. We can't just keep backing American foreign policy interests. So if America doesn't like it, well, take some chilies and shove it where the sun don't shine.
The CAATSA sanctions may not happen on India. There's a higher probability may not happen on India. And
If it does happen on India, I can honestly tell you that's the end of the relationship. You set it back to 1971 when the American fleet was what was it? The Seventh Fleet was sent against India during the Bangladesh War.
that's right.
And that will effectively destroy the last 30 years of rapprochement that's happened between India and America. Let's be very clear about that. So it might just happen because of the cumulative incompetence of the Indian government, which hasn't given any substantial arguments. They just keep giving rhetorical arguments on why it shouldn't happen. I think the most informed critiques of imposing CAATSA sanctions have been coming from America. The few good think tankers in the sea of muck, that is DC think tanks, have been making a noise about it. But again, let's be very clear, it isn't a done deal. The National Interest, for example, just published something by some weird-ass fellow that I've never heard of saying, well, the Quad is meant to be a concert of democracies, and India is no longer a democracy, it's become a fascist dictatorship, and therefore it no longer qualifies for the Quad. Okay, you could very much have that kind of thinking that, takes the day, and they might just end up imposing sanctions on India.
Yeah, there is a very high I see 40% chances of sanctions being used against India. But you are absolutely right. And India doesn't need the US so much other than the IT exports.
Look, I would disagree. India needs America big time. Okay, this notion that a beggar doesn't need a man in a Rolls Royce to throw a few coins at him every now and then, this is a very wrong notion. And let's be clear about one thing, India is a beggar. We pretend to have our pride and self-respect and all of that, but I don't think beggars can be choosers. We play the game, a pretty lady begging on the street thinking that the man in the Rolls Royce is flirting with her, leading on her family and her dependents to believe that that country is actually flirting with her, etc., etc. It's fine, but let's be clear about one thing. India desperately needs America. India can't industrialize without it, but India is its own worst enemy.
Now, in the case of Russian president, America, Russia is one of the biggest, you can say, strategic enemies in the US. Even more than China. Even though they might say something against China, but China is their kind of a unspoken ally as well as a belligerent, both of them at the same time. But when you see China playing US with, now China threatens sanctions on the US is a reverse way, and the China is also in the hands of Russia, or Russia is like a state to them. So China is playing this game in a very much more mature way, the way the Western economies play the role. Now, India, on the other hand,
it's not a mature way. It's actually a very crude way, which you can transparently see through. And it's very curious, I remember at the Munich Security Conference in 2013, in all these side conversations, of course, it was a main chatting point on stage as well, but in all these side conversations we were having, they would come up and say, oh, corruption is such a major deal. Italy is preventing action against Russia because Silvio Berlusconi has so many private deals with the Russians and he's dancing on Putin's lap or whatever. Now tell me, how does that not apply to Americans and Chinese company? The president's own son, Hunter Biden, is compromised to China. How is he any less compromised than Silvio Berlusconi was to Russia? And they're touting this whole Olympic boycott. Mind you, it's not an Olympic boycott, it's a diplomatic boycott of the Olympics as some great, fierce achievement. This was the same bullshit we got treated to under Obama, the China pivot. Where was the China pivot? We never saw it on the ground. Far from it, it withdrew troops from 400-500 kilometers off the Chinese coast, about 1,000 kilometers off the Chinese coast. If there was an Asian pivot, well, technically it was the China pivot. They call it the Asia pivot, just to avoid naming. I didn't see it. Obama was very happy to throw Japan under the truck. When the entire thing about the Diaoyu Senkaku Islands broke out, there was this very cryptic message that went out from Washington saying, uh, it really depends on our alliance only comes about if Japan proper is attacked. Now, do you consider the Senkakus to be Japan or not? This was left up to interpretation. Biden has still not come up with any clear warning to the Chinese over Taiwan, unlike Shinzo Abe, who did. And Shinzo Abe even though he's the ex-prime minister, he very clearly spelled out what the conservative, the LDP thinking in Japan is, which is Taiwan is a red line. You come there and Japan enters the war. Now, that is the kind of statement you need Biden to be making, but he will not.
No, I think this administration in the US is heavily compromised by these think tanks, which are extremely leftist and extremely anti-USA.
It's not. You don't have to be leftist. Most of these people are complete war crazy warmongers. All right, they're not leftists. They're just crooks. They're just crooks. They're brown noser crooks. They have nothing salient to say. Their entire bread and butter is paid for by shady funding. There is some kind of a difference between lobbying and think tanking. In many of these cases, they actually breach that because lobbying has a very specific definition. They manage to do everything that a lobbyist would without actually breaking the actual technical definition of what lobbying is. And that's what they do.
No, that's very true, Abhijit, because you nailed it actually. Because the American, what you call it, inertia against China is palpable in the whole world right now. And the Ukraine, we already spoke in the last show that I'm not going to touch Ukraine and Russian thing, but again, the American response is very tepid over there, even though they are the ones who
look,
brought
I
up the
think,
Ukraine.
Here's the issue. This Ukraine is again playing with fire. You know what Russia's red lines are. And, you can keep saying stuff like, oh, Ukraine, you can't invade Ukraine, etc., etc., etc. Russia's made it very clear. You send troops into Ukraine, we're invading. There's no if or but. Let's be very clear about this. If US troops land in any kind of sizable numbers, or any US military forces lands in Ukraine in any sizable numbers, Russia will invade. Make no mistake about this. We were told this well before the Crimea annexation happened, in no uncertain terms. In absolutely no uncertain terms. They've seen what's happened with Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia. They will not let you come into Ukraine. Now, if you think that this is something worth going to war with Russia about, congratulations to you. You can lose as many troops and as many people and as much equipment as you want. I wish you best of luck.
I wish India could follow, they call Russia as a friend, but they could follow a few things like these in their borders also, because I think that's the way it will ensure security. I wish. Now coming to
look, I really don't wish that. I'll tell you why. Putin's problem is he never thinks of the economy. He never thinks of anything other than security. He is so security obsessed. He doesn't see the economy as a critical part of security. That's very problematic. There is a balance to be had out here. The problem is Russia is one extreme, India is the other extreme. Not that we're very good at the economy. Huh? We keep mismanaging our economy left, right, and center, but that's a different matter.
Now, my last question of the day, because I know you have to go somewhere. Now, the Chinese and the Russians. Now, Russia considers most of the Central Asian states as its backyard, and they won't tolerate anyone interfering there. India has not defined that backyard so far. They have lost all the backyard. In fact, now the enemy is on the borders in the western border, as well as they're breathing down the northern border. Tibet was that buffer India has lost. and Myanmar also they're losing. So Indian defense planners, what are they doing? Why there is no buffer states around the Indian borders so that the security can be established?
They're giving speeches. I don't know if you know this, but it's ancient Indian wisdom, that the recitation of the oh, it leads to peace on the borders. Yeah. And you go around giving idiotic speeches, that also leads to peace on the borders. Ancient Indian wisdom. This is what 5,000 years of civilization has. This is that beautiful point of international relations that 5,000 years of civilization has led us up to.
Well, Yudhishthir created a buffer zone, like from Kyrgyzstan to Hastinapur, that was a buffer zone. To Kashmir.
Look, we destroyed one buffer zone, which was Sikkim. We annexed Sikkim. Sikkim was always meant to be a buffer zone. Right? But look at Bhutan as well. Bhutan has decided to screw us over, and they've concluded their own peace with the Chinese, where the Chinese get some pretty interesting direct access to the chicken's neck to come after us. Okay. And we let the Bhutanese do it. We've been seeing this shift in Bhutan for a long time. Some of us have been warning the government about it. You look at the editorial stance of the Bhutanese newspaper, which is basically, it's the king's personal toilet paper. That they claim to be independent and all of that, but they're the king's personal toilet paper. Now, what do you do? What do you do? So, the problem is India isn't a reliable friend. And we're an easy to walk over enemy. You're literally incentivizing people to come at you.
Absolutely. We are incentivizing people to come at the borders, and they know that we are going to get onto negotiation and no direct military action. So therefore, they keep coming on. Along the coastlines of India, we see a Coast Guard, very powerful Indian force, proacting, but they are not taking actions around Maldives, around Lakshadweep. Lakshadweep is gradually becoming a problem for India. Now, do you think that they have some plans for it? Because this is a large archipelago, and India needs to have a very strong foothold, because it is a natural aircraft carrier right in the middle of the ocean before anyone comes to the Indian mainland. Do you think there is a active plans over there?
Look, with the Indian military planning, there's just, to quote the Israeli foreign minister, they never lose an opportunity to lose an opportunity.
Thank you so much, Abhijit, for today coming on the show and talking about the Indian security scenario around India. We discussed all sides of the border, and next week we'll come up with something even more interesting than that. We watch out for that. This is as per the demands of our viewers. Many of them had asked me this question. So thank you, Abhijit, for coming on the show. Namaste, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. Tata.
Bye-bye.